This is the Zac Anesbury Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have our very first repeat guest, Bob Moore. Really enjoyed catching up with you again. So you mentioned no holidays this year, but are you coming back to Australia at all, or New Zealand, or anywhere down in our part of the world?
Well, I'm going below the equator in June, but I'm going to stay in the Western Hemisphere. Nancy and I are going to the Galapagos.
Oh, nice.
In June, and then we're going to pop over to Peru and go to Machu Picchu.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be doing that in June. I think that, I love Adelaide. I love the Institute. I love being there and doing everything. And as I sort of think about, coming back, I need to have a real purpose for coming, right? Where I need to be there to do what I need to do. And right now, I don't see that in the near future, right? So, I needed to be there to start getting things set up to do research remotely. And so as long as I can continue to do that, I don't necessarily see a need to come back.
Yeah.
And there's other places in the world I haven't been. Like I would love to go to Africa, on safari, and so I know Nancy would like to do that too. So as much as I love Adelaide and the Institute, I don't have a plan yet to come back because I don't have a need to come back. I have a desire to come back. I could live in Adelaide. I just, I could come to the Institute every day. Like I said, if I were in Adelaide, I'd go down and live in Glenelg like I did last time and take the flight, and I would just pop in every day and make a nuisance of myself.
What you're telling me is I need to come visit you.
Excuse me. Yes, of course. Yeah, and I'll take you out on our boat that didn't get washed away in the flood. But no, it's, I think that's the thing. It's like, like Nancy's like, you go down there and you fly all the way down there and you get an Airbnb and you do, and you're gone for 6 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I kind of like it and it's a lot of fun. But to me, I'm not sure. I don't know what's in the cards, Zach, and I'm never going to say never because I want to come back.
Yeah.
I need to have a good reason to come.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
And by the way, I've opened up my house to any Ehrenberg-Bass researcher who's traveling to America. Like, come here on a weekend on your way to somewhere else, and I'll give you a free bed, and we'll go hiking, and we'll do whatever. And we'll have some fun, and we'll talk about science. And Carl's been a couple times. Nicole almost made it once. So I'm hoping Byron will come visit on his next visit to the U.S. So, and maybe when people come to the U.S. to do the executive education for How Brands Grow, I might get a visit or two on either end of that seminar as well. So we'll see. I mean, I plan to continue to do what I'm doing, and I feel like I need to ramp up the pace at which I'm doing stuff. But part of it is, like I'm writing this paper on switching or not switching, whatever, however you want to put it. And in order for that thing to get published, it needs new data from kilts. And so I'm kind of like, oh, I can do it, but like, how can I do this and be part of it? What's the, that's the challenge for me.
So one of the things that I've noticed is, and I think this is true of no matter where I visit, if you ask the locals, like, where should I go visit? What should I see? What's like a must do? They're actually kind of the worst people to ask because, we're in our day-to-day lives, we're in our routines, we're very habitual sort of behaviors that we don't actually kind of see our own little part of the world through that sort of eyes, right? But you have this unique perspective where you've been here a couple of times and for a decent period of time. Like, do you have like a top 3 sort of list that you would recommend for anyone who would come to Adelaide?
Oh, to Adelaide.
Or Australia?
I can do both. I mean, I think Adelaide is, you have to come in March, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
which is when all the festivals are going on. Go to Fringe and go to Adelaide and go to the. I mean, I think what I tried to do when I was in Adelaide is I immersed myself in Adelaide.
Mm.
So this last trip, I went to the Adelaide Cup, the horse race. Have you ever been?
No, I can't say I've ever been.
I knew you hadn't. But it was fantastic.
Mm.
And, so it's like, and it was like, because I was down in Glenelg, the tram stop was right there. I just got right on the tram and went.
Mm.
And, it was, fantastic. And then, of course, I've been to Adelaide both times I was there, and which is a big music festival, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of times I've been to some of the fringe events. And so coming in March is great because the weather's good and everything's on. I think the wine, the wine situation is fabulous. I did a Barossa tour, like where you hopped on and hopped off a bus, and got to see 4 or 5 vineyards that way. That was a very good way to do it because you don't have to worry about driving, and you had plenty of time to go and sample a lot of different wines, and then bring some stuff home. And then I've been to Adelaide Hills and also the McLaren Vale. Lots of really cool little vineyards there. So I think that's all really good. The one thing I haven't done in South Australia that I would like to do if I come back is go to Kangaroo Island.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Haven't done that. But I think sort of the top things at Adelaide are the wine regions, the festivals in March. Other than that, Adelaide is just a very, very livable city with like good restaurants and stuff to do all the time. And I could very easily live in Adelaide. In Australia, I mean, I think people don't think to come to Adelaide. It's not on the top of the list. People will come. I mean, everybody wants to go to Sydney and see the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge and so on. And I think my bucket list thing for going back to Australia is to be in Sydney on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I think that's even Australians' bucket list. People who don't live in Sydney, it would definitely be on ours. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Sydney's a must do. You don't need to be in Sydney for that long. 3 or 4 days is plenty. But Sydney is a must do. I've probably been to more places in Australia than you have.
Probably.
Because when I'm there, I take advantage of it. You can do it anytime. You just don't do it. But I've been to the top end, and I think the Kakadu and those parks and those are really fantastic. I like that. I dove on the Great Barrier Reef. It wasn't great for me because it was like my first diving experience, and a cyclone had come through, and so it was kind of rough, and the visibility wasn't great. So I'd like to get an opportunity to do that again. Last trip I was there, I did Western Australia for 10 days. So I went to Rottnest Island and saw the quokkas. And then we went up the coast and we were at Kalbarri and Karajini, and I went swimming in the ocean with manta rays and whale sharks. And, so that was a fabulous experience too. A lot of time in the car because it's so vast. I tell people Western Australia, our biggest state is Alaska, and it's huge. Western Australia is 1.5 times larger than Alaska. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
You only scratch the surface of it in 10 days. And so I think that the place I haven't been yet also that I'd like to go is Tasmania. It's the one state I haven't visited yet. So I do have some reasons to come back from a tourism perspective, but I haven't. Yeah.
The ANZMAC, that conference is in first time ever. It's in Tasmania. So yeah, university. Yeah. So that's first time. First week of December. Yeah.
You're talking about like
this
9
year.
months from now. 10 months from now.
Yeah.
All right. So I need to get cracking on this paper.
Yeah.
That would give me a reason. That would give me a reason to come to Australia to present.
I love Tassie. I mean, I know you like nature and hiking and stuff like that. So you can just rent a car there, not that expensive. And Tassie's really cool because every hour and a half you drive, you kind of feel like you're in a new microclimate and the landscape changes. So, stunning. There you go. I'm trying to lure you here.
Well, I would definitely if I was had an ANSMAC paper that was accepted,
Mm,
I would find a way to come down and present it.
very, very cool. So I think I've very much enjoyed. I mean, we can just talk forever, and we've hung out quite a lot, and we just don't shut up. But I thought like a nice way to wrap up this conversation is to try to think of the past, but also kind of the present. So given that you've retired, what do you think the person who retired, for the first time with your first PhD, obviously not in marketing, would say to the person now who finished their career in marketing now and loves it? Like, what do you think that conversation would be like?
So can you ask that question again? I didn't
Yeah,
quite
yeah, yeah.
understand.
Sorry. What would Bob of, maybe 30 years of age say to Bob now?
But 30-year-old Bob would be astonished at what 65-year-old Bob had done. I mean, I think that, you know, I listened to like Jenny and Byron and people sort of talk about like how did they get into marketing science,
Mm,
and in a lot of ways it was a big grand accident for both of them,
yeah.
and I think it was for me too, right? Like I started out, you really don't know what you want to do or what you're good at when you're 18 and you're going off to college. And, I wanted to be a doctor initially, partly because my mom kept sort of poking me to be a doctor. And then I kind of realized I really don't want to do that. And I was good at chemistry. And so I pursued chemistry and got a PhD and became a professor and all that kind of stuff and wrote papers. And and it was not a super satisfying career, which is kind of strange that like I love academia now, but I didn't like it when it was my job.
Yeah.
Right. And which is, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I kind of like said I didn't really like part of what I did at SEJ because some of it I didn't really enjoy doing. And in a lot of ways, academia is better because you have bigger options, but I didn't like being an academic. And I went to get an MBA so I could do something different. And I fell in love with marketing from the classes I took, and I don't care if it was Kotler was the textbook or not. I mean, it felt like you're at the center of things and, you have to understand the consumer and all that kind of stuff. And then I had I think where this being a scientist was so helpful to me was is I was like going through these marketing and having my own little individual case studies, right? I'm like, what can I learn from this? Like, what worked, what didn't work? And I was kind of like doing, I said this the last time we talked, I was kind of like my own little marketing scientist
Yeah.
and sort of coming up with sort of theories about how the world worked based on what I had seen and what was replicable, right? And that was the difference between, I think, maybe how I would approach it versus someone else who didn't have the scientific training, right? I was really trying to find sort of what the causes were and, did this work in every occasion or not? And then when I got exposed to how brands grow and, it's like the scales fell from my eyes and it was like, yes, I've kind of been seeing this all along.
Yeah.
And I even, one of the things that, I mean, this is kind of a crazy thing, but there's a branch of physical science called statistical mechanics, which is about taking the quantum mechanical, the atomistic view of the world and using the laws there to calculate what you see in the macro space. And I always felt like that there was this sort of stochastic randomness to marketing and consumer behavior. And it turns out, well, guess what? That's the Dirichlet consumer, right?
Mm.
It's like that, it's the consumers behave as if random. And I always felt like there was this sort of thing about individual consumer behavior and you aggregate over the population, then you get what's in the panel, right? And that's sort of like we would have called that, you call that the ensemble average, right? When you're looking at statistical mechanics. And so like, I even had this, like I was connecting like things that I knew about like, relating quantum mechanics to classical thermodynamics, right? With statistical mechanics to like consumer behavior to what you see in the marketplace, right? So this was all like stupid stuff going on in my head that like I didn't really have like I couldn't work on a theory of it, right? I wasn't academic. right? But it was like, it made sense to me. And then when I sort of see, that, you can predict things like, how many people buy a brand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times based on a couple of inputs, right? And because they do behave as if random, they're not behaving randomly, but it looks random, right? So that kind of stuff. So in some ways, I kind of fell into, what I'm doing now, my interest with the Institute. I came by it honestly in a way, but complete and total accident, right? That the whole thought process and the way that you look at the world makes so much sense to someone who's trained as a scientist, right? So the scientist Bob would not have been surprised at the Bob who thinks that way, but the scientist Bob would have been astonished that the marketing Bob could make TV ads and, that was doing that kind of job, because because that job wasn't science when I was doing it, right? I didn't know about Ehrenberg-Bass, right? I only knew Kotler and what I was trained by my bosses on how to do things. So, yeah. So I think that I've had an interesting life journey, right? To go from that place to what I had done, and then to where I am now. In some ways, it feels a little bit like full circle.
Okay.
Because of the science aspect of it.
Yeah. I like that. I think your first word really hit home. Astonished. I think honestly that's an incredible word to use, I think, and yeah, I can't think of a better one. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to enlighten us again, and being the very first ever repeat guest on the podcast. We very much appreciate it.
I hope it was worthwhile.
Yeah, and now I'm gonna, hopefully we'll see you in Tassie, but who knows? And if not, I'll try my best to come to North America and come visit you.
Yes, I would love that, and bring Shaz.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, Zach.
Bye.
Hey guys, it's Zac Anesbury here with just a couple of quick reminders. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, then make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. There are plenty more interviews to come with some of the world's leading marketing academics and practitioners. You do not want to miss these. In the meantime, if you're looking for another way to connect, then follow me on Twitter at Zac Anesbury. That is ZACANESBURY. For my take on the marketing issues of the day.
That was the Zac Anesbury Show.